Have you ever had that series that no one but you remembers? You might try to ask around and see if anyone else remembers that amazing show that you neglected your homework or your chow garden or your chores for, but it seems like you're the only one that remembers. A while back, Disney had a habit of trying to turn their Renaissance-era movie properties into television series. These included The Little Mermaid in 1992, Aladdin in 1994, Timon and Pumbaa in 1995, Hercules in 1998, Tarzan in 2001, and Lilo and Stitch in 2003, among others. These were all great watches for the family and I. You can even find a number of these shows in their entirety on Disney Plus right now. That's a great way of preserving these pieces of Disney history, actual quality notwithstanding.
Aloha, Hawaii!
We just filmed it? Cool!
But for me personally, all these shows were just background noise. Nothing I would actually focus on if they were playing. However, there was one show that I remember being 100% captivated by around this time. And as you could probably guess, that was 2000's Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. The show's premise of a show within the universe of Toy Story lends itself nicely to being familiar, yet fresh. We're immediately on board because most everyone is familiar with Toy Story's depiction of the Buzz Lightyear action figure, which is based on this show's Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger. And boy was I all over Toy Story around this time. The opening sequence of 1999's Toy Story 2 just whet the appetite of those who wanted a real space adventure starring everyone's favorite space guy. Lo and behold, about a year later, the direct-to-video animated film, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command: The Adventure Begins, was released. Technically, this film was the only Pixar movie to not have a theatrical release before Soul released on Disney Plus earlier this year. The boxed release even had Tim Allen reprise his role as Buzz, which is pretty neato. It wasn't quite as easy as it sounds though. There's a great interview with one of the original creators of the show, Tad Stones, by Jace Deal that I'll leave a link for you to view at the card up top. But if I could summarize it for you, after Toy Story 1, what would eventually become Toy Story 2 was being worked on as a direct-to-video sequel. Meanwhile, Tad and his team were given the green light to pursue a prequel series chronicling Buzz's space adventures with his crew. Thus, Disney ordered the basic package of about 65 episodes from the Buzz Lightyear Star Command team. But after meeting with some execs, they were forced to halt production and essentially wait for Toy Story 2 to finish production. At this point, the series was mostly complete, so Tad and his crew began creating their own direct-to-video film to act as a prequel to the prequel series. This means they were going back to the beginning of the series they just finished to create an origin for it and all of its characters. Of course, the series eventually came out and was a fairly moderate success, but it never did incredible. The show ran its 65-episode course and made for a good follow-up on both the direct-to-video sequel and Toy Story's then critically acclaimed theatrical release sequel. But that's it. Nobody really remembers the show anymore. There is no way to watch the entirety of the series anymore. There were no physical releases of the official episodes ever released except for a few singular exceptions. The closest you'll get nowadays is with a playlist on YouTube that has the original 65 episodes. The catch? You can only watch a specific chunk of them due to Disney blocking a random few. So unless you can stumble across a bootleg physical version, the only way to watch what remains of this show is using the playlist I've put in the card in the corner. And that's certainly how I've recently gone back to watch the show. So now you might be wondering, if you've taken all this time to tell us these missteps along the way, was the show itself even worth it all? Well, I mean, okay, well, it's tricky.
Fine, what do you suggest?
I think the show is great. I actually did enjoy my time revisiting all these characters and their personalities, and all the interesting locations in this universe. Buzz's crew makes for a really likable cast of protagonists. The man himself is a pretty entertaining main character. Patrick Warburton was a great choice for Buzz and has his special brand of delivery down pat. We also learned that Buzz was married at one point, but was cheated on?
Till the day she says you're interfering with her career. Oh, sure, you've picked out your curtains and china pattern, but she doesn't care. She just needs her alone time. Alone time with her zero-grav tennis instructor, Franz!
XR is an immortal robot that has some legitimately funny lines and some legitimately worrying lines too.
No, Your Honor, I swear I had no idea she was under warranty.
Booster is probably the weakest of the main characters because his personality is fairly one-note and lacking. He's just the tender-hearted, big, strong guy, and Okay, the writers must have been bored with his character too, because they really like to make fat jokes at Booster's expense.
Good question. Here's another. What happened to your diet, huh? Out of the way, Husky Bob.
Hungry? Well, come and get it! And get a load of the big guy! Yum! Yum!
Forget backup. We're gonna need a crane. No offense, pal.
How is that not offensive?
And he was the only character in the entire show to make me actually cringe. And that was thanks to this line right here.
Booster.
Ninja deserves someone better. Someone who's good and decent and respects things and stuff. Someone like
Don't say it.
me!
Mira's a pretty cool character. She doesn't have the most going on, but when the script does give her something to do, it's engaging enough. She has these Danny Phantom powers that lets her move through objects, rifle through people's thoughts, and occupy the same space as them? Okay, well, at least it's consistent. This is all possible because Mira is from a planet called Tangia, where everyone can do these things, and that is probably one of the most impressive things about this show, the universe and how believably populated it feels. We'll get into this a bit more when we move into the next section of the video, but the universe surrounding Star Command feels very well imagined. Like, if you were to ask me a question about a planet in this universe, I could tell you things that you might find, what the local population thinks about others, what it looks like, is it hostile or not, etc. And I think that goes a long way to make it feel authentic. Trade World is a planet where nothing but scum walk the streets and everyone's looking for trouble. We see criminals and lawbreakers every time we go there. We also get to see the home planets of the main cast in more than a few episodes, so it even doubles back down on how much we know about our characters. For example, Booster is from Joad. It's a farming planet that mimics southern life in a lot of ways, of which I can relate. But you can clearly see that Booster comes from a loving family that will do literally anything, including invading the most dangerous planet in the galaxy to save him. It kinda shows us that Booster gets his extremely loving tendencies from his nice home planet. But Mira, being from Tangia, isn't anything like her home planet, where most Tangians think they're superior beings to most, even including her own father. Mira thinks that she should use her bloodline's gift to help others, and this often causes arguments between her and her family. Again, in multiple episodes, I might add. It makes for a very easy to understand world once you've seen these locations. And as far as animation goes, I think it's a solid cartoon. There are a few instances of cheap movement or noticeable lack of fluidity, but there are also some instances of fairly standout stuff. Some of the action is pretty well drawn, and in the case of episode 49, it had to have been given some extra time or money because some of the action looks great. And the Christmas episode straight up has a Dragon Ball fight.
It keeps me frosty, so to speak.
I'm not kidding, look at this thing. Ultimately, the show is for kids, so its writing can come off as a bit juvenile. But that's to be expected.
I want out! Prison food make fuck gassy.
I mean, the show also has its fair share of things for the older crowds. There are lots of jokes that only a more mature audience will pick up on, and some of them are just,
This is clearly the work of Nose 4A2. Then again, could just be a robot hickey. Can you imagine? 2 robots.
I was also kind of surprised when I saw a robot get violently impaled and then actually killed. I guess it's not all that to gore someone if they aren't a person, and I mean, I don't want to out myself here, but I think I realize why I like this show. The female characters are very strong and independent and well written. Oh, except for you. Your head is way too big. You give off Rouge the Bat vibes, and I don't like that. Yes, the writing is pretty solid all around. I actually smiled quite a few times.
Why'd you do it, Buzz? Just tell me why! Money? Power? Revenge?
And I even related to a few lines more than I expected to.
If I don't get my vacation request form in by 5 p.m., I'll miss my brother's bachelor party next week.
Oh, which copy is mine, yellow or pink?
Hey! You in a bowl? You in a Slim Jim can?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, I can't give any thoughts that are super in-depth because of that one problem I mentioned earlier. I can't fully experience the show. I can only view and comment on what's available on YouTube for free, and there's been no mention of bringing the show back in any physical manner or allowing Disney Plus users to stream it. So if you're looking for more Buzz Lightyear of Star Command content, then you're out of luck. Unless you're willing to take the hand of a certain infamous raccoon mascot. About a month after the first episodes of the show aired, a video game adaptation was released for the original PlayStation and Sega Dreamcast, developed by none other than Traveler's Tales. The very same Traveler's Tales who were responsible for a lot of children's disappointment throughout the early 2000s. About a month later, the game would also be released for Windows. Try as I did, I couldn't find any sort of information on the development of this title. And believe me, I searched. The director of this game, John Burton, was also the founder of Traveler's Tales. Right here on his Wikipedia page, Buzz should be between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story Racer, but it's nowhere to be found. I mean, it's not as if this game was swept under the rug or anything. The copy my parents bought me around the time claims proudly that it's based on a new Disney Pixar TV series. The man celebrates the fact that he worked on Sonic 3D Blast and Sonic R, which are not the most polished games ever made. And even after searching around on Game Hut, John's personal YouTube channel where he discusses lost or hidden trivia of Traveler's Tales projects, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command is nowhere to be seen. This really disappoints me too, seeing as how some of the villains' appearances in the game predate their appearances on the show. But let's not waste any more time theorizing. Let's jump into this game and see if it's worth remembering at all. Okay, real quick, I want to complain. I own 2 copies of this game for the Dreamcast, and I have no problem playing this version for this look back, but I wanted to try and get the best quality footage, so I splurged on a copy for the PC. Little did I know, I shouldn't have bothered. I first tried to just put the game into a disk drive and boot it up from that. It didn't work because of this Disney Interactive install wizard that is no longer compatible with modern hardware. So I had to basically search far and wide for any solution I could come up with. I searched subreddits, I googled a lot, and then I came across a YouTube video from this nice gentleman, but it was uploaded in 2019. I found his Twitter and started a very long, and I'm sure annoying from his perspective, conversation on how I could get this game running. He eventually helped me to get a Windows XP emulator that came with its own trials and fixes to get to work properly. But eventually, after about 2 weeks of trying to find a way to play this PC copy of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, I was able to boot it up. But as soon as I started testing it, the frame rate ran so pitifully that it was unplayable. He was out of ideas, I was out of patience, so I gave up. And the reason I took you on this little journey was to warn you, if you really want to try and play this game for yourself after everything is said and done, don't hunt down a PC copy. You'll be much better off finding a ROM for the Dreamcast or PS1 versions and emulating them. Do not be tempted by the crisper visuals of an authentic PC copy. It's not worth the headache. And of course, if you can splurge and you have the hardware already, go ahead and get a real copy. I don't know if they're very expensive, but they shouldn't be. Anyway, I will now explain the gist of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command structure so you can understand the problems I have with it more clearly. Cool? Cool. This game sees the player guiding Buzz through 14 missions as he attempts to beat whatever villain of the week in a foot race to the arena for the final arrest. Or rather, a death match. Because Buzz doesn't arrest anyone, or even take anyone in alive. Mostly every enemy or stage is adapted from a specific episode of the show, so you'll likely see your favorite villain at some point in the game. You get to them by fighting minions, platforming, collecting credits, and doing your best to control one of the most unruly video game protagonists ever. Okay, let's not hide anything from you guys. One of the biggest things holding this game back is Buzz's control. You have full 360-degree movement on the analog stick, you can jump using the A button, fire your weapon with the X button, swap weapons with the B button, and you can strafe left and right with the corresponding triggers. The layout of the controller is actually pretty solid. It's not perfect, but it's much better than some other games I've looked at from this era. Buzz is always able to turn directly around if you flick the analog stick in the opposite direction. The strafe actually helps a lot by helping you keep your speed and move slightly left or right, and your jump is floaty enough to be competent for platforming. You always start out with a standard issue rapid fire blaster, but as you play, destroying enemies to gather credits or just picking them up off the ground, you'll be able to purchase more powerful weapons, shields, or even shortcuts like springboards and teleporters as you come across them. You'll even be able to find vehicles that you can equip for varying prices like a hoverboard, a speeder bike, or a jetpack. Each mission is blocked out in linear paths with only small forks in the road every so often to hide power-ups and optional goodies. Your main objective is always to beat or meet the villain at the arrest point, and when you arrest them, you are rewarded with a gold medal that counts toward your progression to other missions. If you arrive before they do, there will be some free goodies waiting on you, along with an assist from Mira to shave off about half their health and shields before the fight even starts. Every weapon in the game has a color assigned to it. Whatever color it's assigned to determines what color shield it can damage. Some bosses can have a few different colored shields that require a certain weapon to beat. And seeing as how you can carry as many weapons as you please along with you at any time, there's almost no downside to picking up your favorite toys. But just wait, Ross. Just wait. There are also a few side objectives that you can pursue in each main mission. You can find all the LGMs and you can end the stage with a certain amount of credits. Each task you complete awards you with a silver medal that counts towards your progression to the other missions. After you complete the main mission, 2 more optional objectives are unlocked that can award you with even more extra medals. The more medals you have, the quicker you can progress through the 14 missions the game has to offer. Now that I've told you how the game is set up, I can tell you how busted it is. The inclusion of LGM and credit medals makes things a little tricky. All enemies along the way can be killed with your basic blaster. It might take some patience, but it can be done. But this in and of itself pauses you, even if only momentarily, from your main objective, to be the first to the arrest point. So you really don't have time to be mowing down enemies for the credits, but you also need as many credits as possible to get the medal and maximize the effectiveness of your playthrough. And realistically, that's the only thing credits are good for, since destroying enemies actively eats into your limited ammo count for the more powerful weapons. Okay, then you get to the arrest point and you face off against the villain. And this is going to be the one that really shows you what kind of game we're working with here. At the end of each mission in the arrest arena, you have to spend that money anyway for the correct weapon that is always there as to not have a dead game, assuming you didn't grab one in the chase itself. You might be thinking in your head, oh, nice job, Traveler's Tales. Good job at making it fair. Let's say that you were just trying to speed through the level as fast as possible, not worrying about the credits at all. There's a good chance you won't have enough cash to purchase the weapons you need to damage the boss at all. Well, don't worry, good old TT has your back there too. You can just shoot the boss with a weapon they're not weak against, which will cause them to infinitely drop credits, so you don't have a dead game. Oh wow, such a thoughtful and smart bunch of designers. Are you kidding me? That's horribly designed. It's so backwards. I know this doesn't sound like much, but it pretty much completely invalidates what you did in the level preceding the arrest arena. You have a resource that is needed for an optional objective, that is also needed for the completion of the level, which is also supposed to be something you have to work to find in the level. But it turns out as much as you could ever want of that something is just given to you at the end for no reason other than to get the team out of a hole they dug for themselves. For those who really like having a certain weapon, I guess it's good to give them an option to use their favorite toys, but I think it's ultimately a little pointless. If it goes against the progress of one of their side objectives, it's constantly eating into your ammo use, and the villain of the level is likely to not even be weak to your cool weapon. What's the point? And that falls into one of my other issues with the weapons in general. The way in which they're acquired is extremely confusing. When you're playing a game with multiple power-ups, you need to know which power-up you're about to equip, right? It has to be 100% clear before you do so. Before you pick up a fire shield in Sonic Mania, you know what you're picking up because it's totally obvious from a distance. Oh look, that looks like fire. It's a fire shield. Want something slightly more similar to our subject? Fine. You have a good idea from visual design alone what this weapon will do before you pick it up in Halo. So now, with this lesson in mind, I want you to get an idea of what you think picking up this filled-in green circle will do. I'll even tell you that it's a weapon. So, think about what its function will be from this emblem alone. You got a good idea of what it'll be? Okay. Well, it's a yellow gun that shoots yellow blasts that home in on targets. If you got that right, leave me a comment proving it, and I'll send you my extra copy of this game so you can f***ing marry it. I don't know. I don't give a shit. The system in place for picking up new weapons is extremely unintuitive. Not only is it incredibly difficult to discern what the weapons will be from the very basic shapes and colors provided, but it becomes even more difficult to see what it is from a distance when the price is orbiting and flashing in front of it. And then there's the problem of the price itself. What may cost nothing or 10 credits in one mission might cost you 15 or upwards of 45 credits for the same weapon in other levels. It's wildly inconsistent, and it makes it difficult to be strategic with your credits. Because as pointless as I may have made power-ups and weapons seem, there are a few levels where they're useful. In Canis Lunis 2, you're chasing the Wirewolf through locked rooms filled with hordes of enemies that have to be killed to advance, one by one. And if you know where to look, you can find the... I think that's what this one is. Plasma gun. And by itself, it's pretty similar to the standard blaster, but all weapons in the game can be upgraded if you find more than one. And the plasma gun can be stacked to shoot 5 shots at once, making a frustrating stage far more manageable. On Trade World 2, using the speeder bike's turbo mode can actually make it a much more fun level, where you need to keep the speed up by grabbing as much fuel as possible as you go. In the one mission that doesn't have an interesting name, these ice shields are cheap and take the frustrating slippery ice physics out of the picture. Which means no more slipping off ledges, which happened a lot there, I tell you from experience. And I think that's a good segue into Buzz's handling. I may have praised the setup for maneuvering Buzz, but that does not mean that he's fun to control. I would actually say that he's only slightly better to control than a character from Fur Fighters. The difference here is that the levels are far better suited to a character that doesn't need to stop and explore. It's far more enjoyable to keep moving forward and only grab what you see in front of you. Make no mistake though, you will occasionally have to stop and awkwardly explore these stages for something like a power-up or an LGM. And it certainly is annoying when it does happen. Buzz has no way to actually just stop and walk left or right. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that this game was made using a modified version of Sonic R's engine. They seem almost too similar to me. Like, I mentioned moving incredibly fast in the speeder bike levels feels good and natural to pull off, but when you're going for the credits or the LGMs or those fuel packs I mentioned, you have to be right on the money or else you're going to be hearing... Yeah, you'll be hearing that in the back of your head as you try to awkwardly turn around. Strafing helps when you're needing to do some course correction, and I even found some use for it when trying to fight gauntlets of enemies, because God knows that it's an absolute nightmare to try and be precise with Buzz. If you don't have a weapon that spreads or homes in on targets, you better start wiggling that analog stick before you get to your target, because actually being accurate is not happening. And this is exacerbated for boss fights. Some take me just a second to finish, but then there are others who absolutely drag out the fights to an obnoxious degree. And with that, I will be taking you on a wonderful tangent field trip. Now is a good time to reveal that I discovered there was an extra difficulty option. For years, I've been starting this game out on the Cadet difficulty, and I switched to Ranger for this playthrough. And okay, I've had some people tell me that complaining about the difficulty of a game after choosing a harder difficulty is a little like complaining about something you asked for. Because after you sign up for a harder challenge, you should be prepared for, well, a harder challenge. And I do not agree with this at all. A hard difficulty should absolutely be a less forgiving way to play the game, but not by means of cheap tactics from the developers. In some of these boss encounters, the enemy seems to have been programmed to do very specific things. Things that Buzz was obviously not equipped to deal with. Like the Wirewolf and how he dashes from one side of the arena to the other in a matter of seconds. Marl just repeatedly slams into you towards the end of the fight, causing damage to you but nothing to him. In the third phase of his fight, Fixer will fly above where you have no hopes of damaging him, while bombs drop out of thin air right above on top of you. Torque seems like he's just constantly trying to stay behind you towards the end of the fight, and the fish guy on Bathios is just... no. But even beyond all these quirks and cheap tactics the bosses employ, they're just boring to fight. Most of them really have the same strategy. I may have attributed differences to Marl and Torque, but I'd believe it if you told me every boss with a blaster was given extremely similar, if not identical AI. I'd say the final boss battle with Zurg is the only unique fight in the game. He summons robots that you have to kill for credits, and then power up your arsenal to deal with the increasing challenge. And when he dips down into range, unload your hardest hitting moves. It's not great, but it's certainly different. Even the arenas are all the same. which is even more sad, because this is pretty much the same arena from the first mission, and speaking of, the first boss is just some thug on Joad. He's not an actual villain. And a detail I find very interesting given the short window the show and the game went through, there are so many characters from the show that are in the game and vice versa. Like this thug from the first level is in episode 29 right here, episode 50 right here, and episode 54 right here. Marl is just hanging out in the background of the very first episode. Again, most every level in this game is an adaptation of an episode. Mission 8 is based on episode 25, centering around stopping Plasma Boy, but without Booster's cringe line,
"Someone like..."
Don't say it.
"me!"
I had to hear it more than once, so do you. Mission 12 is based on episode 26, with Ty being bit by Nose4A2 in the episode, and then turning into the Wirewolf. Of course, there are some times when the stage beforehand has nothing to do with the clip you're shown after the mission ends, like you're fighting Warp, and then after you see him explode in the volcano,
because Buzz takes no prisoners.
Now you're on Trade World, covered in, But don't you see? The fact that I recognize the location just from a few seconds is admirable, and that's probably the coolest thing about watching this show after having played the game so much my whole life. They really have built an impressive galaxy here. They mention all these planets so much.
Joad.
Trade World. Canis Lunas. Canis Lunas.
Planet Z.
And when you hear these planets' names, you know what they're like. You know of things that happen there. I actually would have liked to see more of the enemies from the show get their own levels. I'd like to see some get representation just to see them brought to life in 3D alone. No matter what I've said about this game, it looks alright and runs pretty great for Dreamcast standards. And this game's soundtrack is surprisingly amazing. But, sorry, I got sidetracked. Yeah, a few episodes feature a planet called Roswell featuring these small green aliens. There are a couple that feature this genius dude who just makes armies of robots. And if he wasn't a perfect candidate for the boss fight template that final boss Zurg had, then I don't know who would. I'm honestly surprised he didn't get his own unique level over Joad Thug or Marl. That's not a name! There are a few episodes that feature this civilization of small people known as Gargantians, and when Buzz and Booster get shrunk down, they have to hunt down radicals. It would have made for a cool level with the shrunken aesthetic. Make it like Tiny Huge Island Mario 64 or something like that. However, switching gears a bit, around the same time as the PC version was released, a Game Boy Color version of the game came out. I had never played it more than a few minutes before the making of this video, but as I soon found out, that was already a hefty chunk of the experience. But first, just listen to it. Yeah. That's nice. This 8-bit recreation of the main Buzz Lightyear theme is so cute, and I will levy this as the game's biggest strength. There won't be too much to cover here. I finished this game in about 45 minutes. Such was the deal with most Game Boy Color titles, I'm aware, but this one strikes me as a product that wasn't on the forefront of Disney's mind. For starters, this is the bare minimum you would think of when I tell you there's a Game Boy version of an early 3D game. Every single level, except for the crappy underwater one, is represented here. Well, I say represented, but that implies respect, or faithfulness to the adaptations. These are some of the most bland and uninteresting levels I've ever seen in a video game. There are some forks in the roads from time to time, but there's nothing interesting to see or acquire down these paths. The structure is about the same as the console version, but without the requirements of the medals, so that's good. But the problem with that then becomes how broken some of these levels are to get through. And I don't mean broken in the sense that the game crashed or didn't work. It was stable enough my whole way through. Even the frame rate was fairly consistent save for a few exceptions, even if I did get stuck in this wall when I tried to use the hoverboard on Canis Lunas 1. Anyway, sorry, I mean broken in the sense that the game's challenge includes you walking headfirst into hordes of enemies and just hoping they don't do enough damage to give you a game over. And when I mean walking headfirst into them, I mean it. The levels and bosses weren't the only thing carried over. Buzz's slippery control was somehow recreated on this little handheld. I guess that's worth an intrigued look through a fancy monocle if nothing else. Literally every single level consists of you walking forward down these corridors trying to get to a boss battle that work exactly as they did in the console version. Except the shields have much less prominence here. You can down any color with any weapon if you just shoot them long enough. But these levels have absolutely nothing going on. You can find credits just laying around, and you can only have 5 on your person, and when you walk over a weapon or a spring pad or a vehicle, the cost is subtracted from your 5. But your first blaster is more than capable of taking care of enemies. Spring pads usually only spring you a small distance forward and actively kill your momentum. The vehicles move way too fast and cost way too much to even be worth it. Even if having some of the better weapons does make it less tedious to kill enemies in your way by auto-targeting, running past them works perfectly fine. And you have plenty of health to warrant this playstyle too. The team was probably aware of this and put these numerous health pickups that almost always restore you to full health around everywhere. There are the returning missions that give you extra medals, and instead of collecting LGMs, it's the XR parts, but since you don't need the medals to progress to the next level, what's the point? So I can do this?
Kelly, look what I did!
I don't care.
I guess you can say that this is certainly a Buzz Lightyear game, but beyond that, I don't think there's much merit in playing it nowadays. The game can be beaten in such a short amount of time. The presentation, while not bad, leaves a lot to be desired. Besides some of the cute pixelated renditions of the characters and enemies, nothing really looks too great. Like, look at Buzz right here. Poor guy. The 5 songs in the game are alright for Game Boy Color standards, but nothing incredible. Not as catchy or atmospheric as the console release. And you won't be able to hear anything anyway while you're blasting away robots and hearing the same blast sound effect over and over. The game isn't very fun to play. It's actually pretty mindless. There's nothing to do other than get to the end and take down the boss. You can try to get the credit medals or the XR part medals, but it doesn't mean a thing for progression or any sort of completion bonus. The game isn't really challenging either. The closest I came to dying was when I, again, got stuck in the wall on Canis Lunis. And I did die when the game tried to mimic the rooftop jumping segment of the console game in Trade World 2, and you get an insta-death if you fall. Yeah, don't make an isometric platforming game with slippery tank controls. It doesn't work out. This is one that you can get for an emulator to try out if you're just that curious, but it's not a necessary piece of the franchise's legacy in the slightest. What a franchise. But I'm honestly surprised I ended up enjoying the show as much as I did with this rewatch. There are so many funnier, quotable lines that have aged in the best possible way.
My ranger sense is getting all tingly.
I think they make a lotion for that. Watch out!
The voice casts were perfect for their roles and excelled in giving some amazing performances that have obviously stuck with some of us long after the show could have been officially tracked down. And even if Patrick Warburton is just giving us his typical, poison for Cusco. It's all great stuff.
What? Oh, that's great.
The Game Boy Color game, while nothing special at all, was also completely harmless. It's something to have on your phone while you're watching the show, but the Dreamcast game is where things get a bit more personal. I admit, I was harsh on the game in this video. I was more scathing than I've ever been to this game. I usually tell people how much I love it without question, but I've only been playing on the cadet difficulty. It would maybe take me 2.5 hours to breeze through the game on this difficulty, but on Ranger mode, I was able to really see the cracks for the first time, and I didn't even air all my grievances. Bringing certain vehicles to certain sections makes it impossible to proceed without injuring yourself or wasting time that the villain can use to get ahead. Trade World 1's time trial mission was never programmed properly, so upon entering the mission, you're taken directly to the victory screen with a perfect 0 across the board. Legendary, I know. The jetpack vehicle is absolutely useless, and I could go on. But I still love this game. It's purely nostalgia, but I do. It's satisfying to finally take down some of these bosses. Traversing over some of these levels is actually fun. The platforming can be pretty solid at times. The weapons, as unintuitive as they are, feel great to mow enemies down with when fully upgraded. The music for each level is unique and lends an actual energy to the chase. And on top of it all, it's more Buzz Lightyear to consume. If you have a desire to attempt to see what I see, I recommend getting an emulator to try the Dreamcast or the PS1 versions out for yourself. Don't waste your time and money with the PC version like I did. And watch what you can watch with the show on YouTube. It's pretty entertaining. It's still a kid's show, so you'll see some, baby content, if you will. But like I've shown, they never shy away from showing us every angle. Wow. I'm not sorry now, and I won't ever be. Here's hoping that Lightyear will be a sort of spiritual successor to this criminally underrated franchise. And there's only one place to go from here.
To infinity and beyond!
Thank you all so much for watching all the way to the end. I really hope you found it entertaining to hear about a series or a game you've never experienced before. Or maybe you have and wanted a bit of a refresher on what it had to offer. Whatever the case, I thank you endlessly for watching. And if you did enjoy it, I did something similar with Avatar: The Last Airbender a year or so back. The link will be in the end card if you're interested in that. Or you could check out some of our other content if you feel interested. And if you want to see us do a retrospective like this on any show in particular, feel free to let us know in the comments below. But we already have one more in the works, so be on the lookout for that. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching, so thanks for stopping by and have a great day.
Let's make peace, let's not give war a chance. No more bloodshed, war makes you dead. Why not instead just have a dance? Let's make peace, there's so much more to do. There's gardening and macrame and visiting the zoo. Let's put away the sicky things, the nasty, yucky, sticky things, the particularly icky things. Let's all make